Hey, I'm Doug. Welcome to Backcountry Pilgrim, a channel dedicated to hiking, backpacking, camping, and the Camino de Santiago. Today I want to talk to you about the Easthills Outdoors Skyloft Hammock and the Cocoon Underquilt. Alright, so first things first, I am not a hammock camper. In fact, this is the first hammock I have ever set up. I don't have anything against hammock camping, it's just that I've never personally done it. Now, I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money just to find out whether or not I liked hammock camping. So I decided to go with a fairly budget setup. If you've done much research into hammocks, you know that a lot of decisions have to be made. Sometimes there are so many customization options, it can be bewildering unless you are a really experienced hammock camper and know exactly what you want. I, however, have never hammock camped. I don't know much about it. I don't even know if I would like sleeping in a hammock, so I wasn't about to go out and drop several $100s just to find out. One of the things I really like about the Easthills Outdoors Skyloft Hammock is that this bag contains everything you need to set up your hammock. Now, while I was trying all this stuff out, I also knew that it was important to stay warm, and so I got my first underquilt. This is the Cocoon. It is a 45-degree, 7 degrees Celsius underquilt. Definitely a 3-season, not for winter camping. Really, none of my gear is right now, so I'm fine with just going 3-season with all my stuff. I decided to give this one a shot. So inside this bag, which by the way is seam sealed, first of all you get the hammock. The Skyloft weighs about 20 ounces, about 21 ounces with the bag, and one of the cool things is that it is a double opening bag, which allows you to simply slide open up, reach in, and pull the carabiner out. This is what's going to attach to the tree straps, which I'll show you in a second. And then you can basically clip it on and then just run this bag out to the other strap. You never even have to take this off the line. So you're not going to lose it. It's not going to get all nasty and dirty if it's raining. And it makes for a very quick setup. And as you will see, a very quick repack. Next inside we have your tree straps. And these are super simple. Both of the straps together weigh about 10.5 ounces. And basically what you get is a strap with a loop on one end, ta-da, and a daisy chain series of loops down the side. And all you do is wrap this around the tree, pass one end through the loop, and pull it tight. Yoink. And that's it. Strap attached. It's good for the trees. It's not going to harm them. And it basically is just using the friction of the strap and the bark to hold you up. Next, you get a set of stakes. There are 6 of them and they weigh about ½ ounce each. And these are nice and long. They come with a little cordage knotted up on the end there for easy clipping. And then finally, you get the tarp. Now the tarp weighs 30 ounces with the bag. It's got a ton of cordage. So this is the heaviest piece in the package. And although this looks kind of nightmarish, I actually was in kind of a hurry when I packed this back up. I didn't get all the cords inside. It's really not a big deal. Basically what you have is a loop of cord coming off of each corner and then 2 right in the middle, which when pulled tight form your ridge line, kind of the peak of the roof of your tarp. This goes over the top of the hammock if you need it for wind or rain. So what you definitely need is the hammock and the straps, and together these weigh 2 pounds. You put everything together in the dry bag, it comes to 4 pounds. Now for those of you that don't know, an underquilt is a special piece of gear designed for hammock camping. Sleeping bags and camping blanket type things rely on pockets of air to keep you warm. These are not like the old cowboy sleeping bags you might have grown up with as a kid, where the actual material of the sleeping bag is what is trapping your heat. To keep things lightweight, what they do is they fill lightweight material with either some kind of synthetic or down feathers in these big baffles, and your body heat radiates into the blanket or bag, and that forms a protective layer of heat around you. Now the problem, of course, is that when that air gets smushed and goes away, you basically don't have any insulating properties left, or at least not much. And this is why when you're tent camping, your sleeping pad is so important. It doesn't matter how poofy and warm your sleeping bag is, when you lay down on top of it and smash those baffles down, you basically have no insulation other than that thin piece of nylon that is now pressed up against you. And that's when the air in the sleeping pad becomes your next line of defense against cold. So on a hammock, this is also important because if you think about it, if you're laying on the bottom of a nylon thin hammock, where's that heat going to go? It's just going to disappear. So what an underquilt does is it basically forms like kind of a carrier for the hammock, and it provides that insulating layer under the nylon that the hammock doesn't. Now these can be pretty bewildering if you've never tried to set one up before. There's a lot of cords hanging off. This one does have a bit of a draft collar, and when you pull on these, it shrinks the ends of the quilt down so that it kind of grabs onto the hammock. So how does all this work? It's actually pretty simple. You wrap the straps around the tree, you take the carabiner out of the hammock and clip that in, both ends, now the hammock is hung. No problem at all, shouldn't take you a minute. The underquilt is a bit of a different story. It also clips in with carabiners at either end, and that's enough to get it under you. But there's a bit of adjustment and tweaking that you need to do to get it so that it fits the hammock just right. And it wouldn't be that big of a deal, except that you kind of have to be in the hammock to really know how it's laying down. So there's some tricks that you can do to kind of get that figured out, but it's not complicated, it's just a little more time consuming than the hammock is. The tarp itself is pretty easy. You wrap one end of the middle cord around the tree, the other middle around the other tree, that forms your peak, and then you just pull the two sides out and stake down the corners. That's really about it. Underquilt. I asked them if I should send it back to Amazon, knowing that I could, because I could get a refund from Amazon. And instead they said, no, why don't you go ahead and hang on to it, and we'll send you a new one. So since I'm getting a new one, I thought it would be instructive to take this one out and just see how bad these attachments really are. I would not recommend doing this from home, but hey, that's why we do these videos, right? So I can do things that you don't have to. So the problem that I had is that this attachment point right here pulled off of this, and that's why there isn't one on here right now. So first, let's have a closer look at the stitching. So there's no obvious flaws in the stitching that I can see, at least. There aren't any threads hanging out. It looks like a solid piece. So what I'm going to do is actually pull on this a bit, and I'm going to see how much pressure it can handle. Now before I do this, it's important to remember that the weight-bearing capability of this strap should only really have to be enough to hold the underquilt up. In other words, this piece is not designed to hold your body weight. In fact, if it is, you've set it up wrong. So first things first, it has no trouble supporting the entire weight of the quilt by itself. But even with snapping it, it looks exactly the same. But what will it do if I apply some real pressure? In fact, let's find out exactly how much. Now, this quilt all by itself is 30 ounces on the nose. Okay, so keep it in mind that we really should not need to ask any more than 30 ounces of pressure on this particular attachment point. That was 90 ounces of pressure on one attachment point. So far, this attachment point by itself has held up to 3 times the weight of the entire underquilt. That was 120 ounces. So I am now at 4 times the weight of the entire quilt supported by only one attachment point, and it is still looking just fine. Now, I'm not going to pull this thing until it tears off. I think it's pretty obvious that it's already done pretty darn well. However, just because I love you guys, I'm going to go for 5 times the weight of the quilt. 150 ounces of pressure on a single attachment point. Let's see what happens. There, okay. All right, I just put 150 ounces of pressure on this single attachment point. As you can see, no worse for the wear. It's doing just fine. Now here's the piece that came off. As you can see, several threads are sticking out of it. It's not looking too great. So I have to conclude that either the broken strap is an anomaly or the strong strap was. And given that this quilt has pretty good ratings on Amazon, given that I was able to put 5 times as much pressure on a single attachment point than it should ever be asked to carry, and it had absolutely no trouble whatsoever, I have to conclude that this is a pretty rockin' underquilt, and I just happened to get a bad one for review. Easthills Outdoors totally hooked me up. As soon as they found out what had happened, they offered to send another one to me directly without even going through Amazon or anything else. It's on its way as we speak. So I am going to go ahead and give this a 5-star rating on Amazon, even though I got a defective one.